Welcome to my channel. There was silence in the courtroom, the atmosphere thick with tension, as the judge came forward and spoke the words that would be repeated across the Sister Wives universe. Cody Brown, the husband who once presented himself as the overlord of a sprawling family kingdom, was formally publicly called out in open court. The judge's decree was direct, unvarnished, and devastating. Cody's clandestine deals, his secret trades, and his record of subterfuge had finally been revealed. For years, rumors circulated about where the money was going, why some decisions were incomprehensible, and how Robyn always got to live a little too well while the other wives struggled. Now those rumors had become cold facts, exposed in a courtroom where Cody could no longer hide behind charisma, swagger, or TV cameras. This wasn't family soap anymore. This was contracts, bank statements, and a paper trail that proved Cody wasn't merely irresponsible with money. He was calculated in keeping things from the very women who worked to build the empire that he tried to claim as his own. The judge wasn't shy. He characterized it as a betrayal, a trust so broken that it required repercussions. And those repercussions would rock not only Cody and Robyn, but the entire Sister Wives legacy. Since the Brown family had been financially enigmas for years, fans had speculated, Christine and Janelle asked questions, and even Meri sometimes seemed lost in the promises that came and went. But every time the truth threatened to come to the surface, Cody would sidestep, saying it was all for the family's good, for the family's future, for the Coyote past dream. But in court, that facade crumbled. Evidence revealed that during the time Janelle was living in an RV, attempting to stretch the dollars, and Christine was trying to finance her move to Utah, Cody was pouring money into side businesses and secret accounts. The most surprising disclosure came from a group of bank documents associated with shell companies. It is alleged, based on testimony provided by insiders, that Cody had secretly set up at least 2 LLCs, which no one else among the other wives knew anything about. These firms were utilized to divert money from family income streams, such as TLC paychecks, into business ventures that only he and Robyn would benefit from. One company, based on testimony, had been registered as a consulting firm. Another was allegedly formed to manage media projects, but actually it was where thousands of dollars from speaking events and side arrangements went into thin air. The courtroom gasped when the judge read aloud excerpts of these documents. Not only had Cody misdirected money, but he had arranged the deals so that deliberately he kept Christine, Janelle, and Meri out of them. It was a fiscal betrayal that equaled the emotional abandonment fans had witnessed on television. Christine's lawyer termed it a pattern of manipulation and concealment, whereas Janelle's attorney termed it economic abuse under the guise of family leadership. Robyn, sitting next to Cody, attempted to keep her calm, but witnesses claim she became tearful when presented with proof of her signature on paperwork for these accounts. She said she didn't realize the extent of what she was signing, that she trusted Cody, that she believed it was all part of the family's overall financial plan. But the judge wouldn't budge. He informed her bluntly, "Ignorance is not an excuse when you benefit directly from the deception." Outside the courtroom, the contrast could not have been more stark. Christine looked serene, as if vindicated, as if all those years of being gaslighted had at last been recognized by someone no one could gainsay. Janelle was said to be quietly determined, her down-to-earth nature concentrated not on gloating, but on what came next. What could be recovered in terms of assets? What protections could be established? Meri, long stuck in an in-between place of loyalty and disillusionment, was said to have looked shaken. For her, it was not merely about cash. It was assurance that the loyalty she had extended had been returned with lies and secrets. Cody, on the other hand, was seething. As the judge finished for the day with his last words, calling his actions calculating and self-serving, Cody clenched his jaw and muttered under his breath loudly enough for those around him to hear, "This is a witch hunt. They've all turned against me." It was the same mantra viewers had heard once before, but this time it was meaningless. The law had spoken. The effect of this decision was instantaneous. Cody's reputation, already tarnished by public opinion, was now officially tainted by judicial disapproval. His popularity with fans, his capacity to recover financially, and even his potential for using the Sister Wives brand in the future were all at stake. More significantly, the decision paved the way for Christine, Janelle, and even Meri to seek damages. Legal analysts predicted what had started out as a fight over property might turn into an even bigger fiscal accounting, one that had the potential to split whatever was left of the Brown family wealth. And yet, despite all the theatrics in the courtroom, there was a larger narrative at play here. It wasn't about cash. It was about the string that had characterized Cody's leadership for years. The judge's words pierced to its essence. This wasn't negligence. This was intentional. It was a choice to deceive, and it carried consequences. That one sentence might end up being the defining phrase in Cody Brown's legacy, a legacy once constructed on the facade of unity and faith, now tainted by charges of fraud, deception, and betrayal. As the day drew to a close, Christine, Janelle, and Meri emerged from the courthouse side by side, a silent demonstration of solidarity that fans had long awaited. Cody and Robyn, on the other hand, slipped out the back door, protected from reporters, their silence more eloquent than words. The war for the truth had been waged, and for once the wives had prevailed. But behind closed doors, there were whispers that this was only the tip of the iceberg. There were more documents, more testimonies that had yet to see the light of day. If that were the case, then the judgment against Cody wasn't the knockout punch. It was just the first shot of a battle that would take everything he had left away from him. And as fans and relatives alike grappled with the magnitude of what had been exposed, one thing remained in the air like an oncoming storm cloud ready to burst. If Cody had been hiding all these secrets for all these years, what was he still hiding? The next day, the media firestorm erupted. Journalists set up camp outside the courthouse. Social media followers broke down every aspect, and hashtags such as John Brown family fraud and Cody exposed gained traction. No longer was this about a single family. It was now a warning story of how celebrity, fortune, and concealment could transform a home into a war zone. For Christine and Janelle, it was vindication. For Robyn and Cody, it was humiliation enacted on the grandest possible stage. Within the courthouse, the information continued to spill out. The judge had demanded a more thorough probing of Cody's financials, so forensic accountants were summoned in to map out years of transactions. What they found told a tale more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. It wasn't merely 2 secret LLCs. There were a minimum of 4 distinct business entities associated with Cody, all having unclear intentions and incompletely filed. Some were set up in states outside of Flagstaff, and one wonders why Cody had done all of this. One of the accountants said that the pattern appeared to be what you would see in someone attempting consciously to cover up money trails. The worst of it was yet to come, though, when they reported on what some of the funds had been spent on. Some of it had gone into busted business deals, like Cody's infamous Patriarch Prime Principles, a wannabe coaching scheme that tanked. Thousands more had been invested in high-end trucks, guns, and so-called consulting fees to individuals who never actually delivered services. And then there were the personal indulgences, exorbitant shopping trips, vacations that weren't discussed on the show, and mysterious withdrawals that coincided with Robyn's documented online spending. As the evidence came to light, Christine's lawyer took the chance to remind the court what had been going on with the other wives in the same time frame. Christine had been fighting to pay for her relocation to Utah. Janelle had been pushed into an RV because she couldn't develop on Coyote Pass. Meri had been excluded from financial matters altogether, even though she was still bound up in the family business on paper. While they made sacrifices, Cody and Robyn lived as if they were the only ones who counted. In the courtroom, Christine reportedly sat still, her hands folded, listening intently as the details confirmed everything she had long suspected. Janelle, ever practical, took notes, her focus already on what could be done to secure her fair share. Meri's eyes welled up with tears when her name appeared in the filings, a reminder of how deeply entangled she had remained even when she had tried to step back. Robyn, on the other hand, was grappling with the weight of evidence. Witnesses testified that she was visibly shaken, her eyes puffy from crying, holding a wad of tissues. At one point, questioned about a particular transfer she had signed, she stuttered, "I thought it was for the family." The judge interrupted her brusquely. "The evidence indicates otherwise. These were not family payments. These were personal benefits masquerading as family obligations." Cody, nonetheless, was unfazed. He leaned back in his chair with arms crossed, glaring at Christine and Janelle's lawyers as if challenging them to push further. When asked point-blank why these entities were formed without the knowledge of the other wives, he retorted, "Because they never respected my leadership. I had to make decisions to protect the family." The courtroom broke out into murmurs. The gavel came down, a demand for silence, before the judge coldly responded, "Protecting the family is not about defrauding them." Outside the courthouse, the public attitude toward Cody changed even more. For years, he had been charismatic but flawed, a man weighed down by plural marriage. Now he was portrayed as manipulative, selfish, and dishonest. This was particularly so with his wives, Christine and Janelle. The two were viewed as survivors, women who had weathered years of gaslighting and were now standing up in their truth. The fans united with them, taking to social media with messages of support and disgust for Cody. The legal commentators who were invited onto talk shows and podcasts explained that Cody's actions could have serious ramifications. Not only would his reputation be ruined, but he could lose money, receive tax audits, and even be sued by business associates if it was found that he had misled investors in his businesses. Others hypothesized that TLC, the television network that had aired Sister Wives for more than a decade, could distance itself completely, not wishing to be connected with a scandal of this level. At Coyote Pass, the territory that had originally been marketed as a vision of togetherness was now one of betrayal. Pictures began appearing of the land, deserted, vacant, and barren. To most fans, it symbolized everything Cody had promised and was unable to provide. Christine and Janelle were adamant in court that they did not want anything to do with it anymore. They wanted their money back, not another promise of a future home that never materialized. Meri also shared the sentiment, stating that she felt deceived into thinking the land would someday be hers and that she could feel secure there. The judge recognized these assertions, stating that compensation and restitution would be discussed in the final decision. Meanwhile, Robyn's situation became more and more desperate. As each new revelation emerged, her image as the victimized wife began to crack. Fans who had once sympathized with her started to view her as an accomplice, a co-conspirator to Cody's machinations who had reaped the rewards while ignoring the consequences. The story swung from sympathy to condemnation, and Robyn, once the preferred wife, was now shunned in tandem with Cody. The judge, in perhaps the most quotable moment of the case to date, stated, "This court does not sit to unravel hurt feelings. It sits to provide fairness under the law. And fairness dictates accountability, even if it is inconvenient, even if it hurts." Those words rang outside the courthouse doors, repeated on news headlines and social media websites. Accountability had finally caught up with Cody Brown. But even as the verdict drew nearer, there were suggestions that some of the evidence had yet to be disclosed. Lawyers for Christine and Janelle hinted at further documentation, which could emerge over the next few weeks. Rumors of foreign accounts, covert partnerships, and even former members getting involved spread like wildfire. The scandal, it appeared, was just beginning. And if those rumors turned out to be true, Cody's secret deals could hurt not only his pocketbook, they could ruin his legacy forever. As Christine, Janelle, and Meri emerged from the courthouse that day, they walked steadily, heads held high. The burden of years of deception was finally being removed. But Cody and Robyn departed amidst a storm of questions, their future up in the air, their credibility in tatters. The fight was far from over, and the world waited to see what would happen next. The tension in the courtroom increased as the second set of testimony began. The attention this time moved away from the financial documents and toward the human toll. Christine's lawyer brought in witnesses who painted a terrible portrait of the cost Cody's secret deals had exacted on the family in human terms. It wasn't dollars and cents, it was years of distrust, insecurity, and manipulation masquerading as leadership. Christine herself stood, her voice firm but tearful. She told of the countless times she'd spoken with Cody about money, how she'd been informed repeatedly that the family could not afford some things, that every penny had to be spent on the future. She testified to seeing her children lose opportunities because money wasn't there, while Robyn's house seemed to never run out of anything. She recounted in agonizing detail the day she came to understand that she could no longer rely on Cody, not merely as a spouse, but as a co-builder of their life. "I thought he was serious when he told me the land would be an inheritance," Christine testified, her gaze locking with Cody's in the courtroom. "But the whole time, the inheritance was a fabrication." Janelle testified next, and her evidence was equally compelling. She set out the sacrifices she made, how she had put her own money in the family pot, relying on Cody to use it wisely. She said the choice to live in an RV was not a choice at all, but a necessity, because she was told they could not afford to build on Coyote Pass. She addressed the judge directly and remarked, "Had I known what was actually going on, I would never have agreed to make that sacrifice. I was deceived." The judge nodded gravely as her words sank in. The contrast between Janelle's pragmatism and Cody's excuses was stark. On the stand, Cody had presented himself as misunderstood, even persecuted. But Christine and Janelle's testimonies cut through the spin. They showed that this wasn't just poor management or tough circumstances. It was intentional. It was deception. Meri's turn on the stand was perhaps the most surprising. For years, she had been regarded as aloof, hanging on the periphery of the family, faithful but isolated. But when she spoke, her words were heavy with betrayal. She acknowledged she had lingered longer than she ought, holding on to hope that Cody would come to appreciate her again. But in the financial sense, she had been left out of the equation, frequently handled as if she didn't have a say in matters that concerned her directly. She described her bed and breakfast, how she'd attempted to hold on to independence, only to discover that even her own earnings were wrapped up in family accounts controlled by Cody. "I wasn't just benched emotionally," she said, her voice cracking. "I was eliminated financially." Robyn's face crumpled as Meri's words landed. It was a reminder that the divide between the wives wasn't just about love or attention. It was about money, security, and survival. The lawyers then presented expert testimony from family law experts and financial ethicists. They described how Cody's actions conformed to patterns in economic manipulation cases, in which one spouse withholds knowledge to keep control. One expert summed it up bluntly: this was not an error. This was a strategy. And the strategy was to consolidate power by controlling access to money. As those words rang in the courtroom, Cody shifted restlessly. He attempted to keep his stoic mask, but those who observed him closely saw his jaw clench, his fists curl, his eyes flick towards Robyn as if searching for encouragement. Outside, the media circus raged on. Each new discovery was a headline, each tear of Christine or Janelle a badge of strength, each denial by Cody another brick in the wall against him in the public court. Talk shows speculated about whether this was the end of Cody Brown's power. Podcasts dissected the cultural significance of a patriarch fallen, and fans poured into comment spaces with indignation and support for the wives. Meanwhile, TLC's silence was deafening. The network that had built its reputation on documenting the Browns' unconventional lifestyle was now faced with a scandal that cut to the core of its brand. Would they distance themselves from Cody and Robyn? Would they pivot the show entirely to focus on Christine, Janelle, and Meri's newfound independence? Industry insiders speculated that deals were already being discussed behind the scenes. But in the courtroom, attention was kept razor-sharp. Christine and Janelle's lawyers pushed harder, presenting emails, texts, and handwritten notes that showed Cody had knowingly withheld facts. In one note, Cody explained to Janelle that the family account was on the edge, advising her to delay any significant spending. The same week, documents revealed he had deposited thousands of dollars into one of his hidden LLCs, funds that went on to pay for a down payment on a new car. The hypocrisy was unshakable. Cody had presented himself as the beleaguered head of an underprivileged family, while maintaining his own comforts and stabilizing Robyn. The sacrifices of the wives were not for the family's utopia. They were for Cody's false sense of authority. And then there was the revelation that stunned the courtroom. Christine's lawyer made veiled reference to another secret agreement, one that had not yet been completely revealed. She spoke guardedly, implying international transfers had been flagged, money siphoned from local accounts into something bigger, something still being investigated. Janelle's lawyer took advantage of the moment. "Your Honor, as my client was being pushed into an RV on empty land, Mr. Brown and Robyn were quietly building their empire. That is not family leadership. That is exploitation." The words stung. Janelle had been the most practical of the wives, the one who'd believed in Cody's dream the longest, who'd labored so hard to bring Coyote Pass into existence. To watch her sacrifices boiled down to nothing more than cover for Cody's secret deals was crushing. Continuing testimony called Christine back to the stand. Her voice was firm, though her anguish was clear. "For years, I thought my efforts counted, that my sacrifices were worth something, that we were working towards a common dream. Now I realize it was a dream founded on deception. He said there wasn't enough money, that we would have to wait, that I was being pushy, while he was constructing something for himself and for Robyn, not for us. Never for us." Her testimony hit the jury. A few jurors leaned in, listening raptly, their faces etched in disbelief and outrage. The emotional aspect of the financial fraud was no longer in question now. This wasn't about figures on a balance sheet. It was about the destruction of trust, the negating of hopes, and the deliberate betrayal of women who had invested everything. Cody attempted to reply. It was his turn, and he gave another speech. Christine left because she wanted out. She wasn't committed anymore. Janelle's always been too independent. And Meri abandoned me years ago. They're just using this court to punish me. But his protests were empty. The facts overwhelmed his apologies. The judge sliced through his speech like a blade. Mr. Brown, this court is not interested in your own personal grievances. It is interested in your actions. And your actions have been dishonest. The ripple effect outside the courthouse was enormous. News sources reported the Desert Holdings revelation heavily. Fans started charting out land records online, posting threads and videos revealing all the details. Hashtags such as Hidden Deals and Desert Holdings were trending within hours. What had started as an intimate family scandal was now a public spectacle, with Cody's every step analyzed and criticized. Robyn's celebrity status took an even sharper blow. Fans who once identified with her tears now blamed her for falsifying them as a way of hiding her complicity. Fake crying Robyn became a meme that was spreading on social media, and each tear she cried during court was picked apart as performance instead of anguish. Meanwhile, Christine, Janelle, and Meri's popularity soared. They became symbols of resilience, women who had endured years of gaslighting and emerged with the truth on their side. Their calm presence in court contrasted sharply with Cody's outbursts, painting a picture of dignity against chaos. At the end of the day, the judge made a frightening pronouncement. This court will not abide by concealment. Mr. Brown, the extent of your secret transactions is much greater than it was originally presented. The ultimate judgment will be based not only on the evidence thus far exposed, but on the general pattern of deceit. The repercussions will be substantial. Christine exited the courtroom with her head held high, Janelle at her side, Meri behind but together. The three women plunged into a whirlwind of flashing cameras, their silence and calm sending a message louder than words. Cody and Robyn, meanwhile, escaped out the back door once more, their formerly cocky veneer in tatters. Witnesses said Cody was seething, cursing furiously, and Robyn was crying hysterically. The contrast couldn't have been greater. And still, rumors circulated more than ever. If Desert Holdings was only one shell company, how many others existed? What else had Cody quietly acquired? How far-reaching was this web of deceit? The storm was not over yet. Indeed, it appeared the eye of the hurricane had just arrived. The wives had achieved a key victory, but the war was by no means over. And as all of them were leaving the courthouse that night, one question was on fire like never before. What secret deal would be revealed next? The last day of testimony was the quiet before the storm. Everyone in the courtroom could sense that the trial had reached its peak. For weeks, evidence had mounted: secret accounts, secret land sales, lavish spending, and outright deception. Now it was time for both sides to stand and deliver. The air was charged, the gravity of each revelation hanging over everyone in the courtroom. Christine sat tall, her head held high, her face calm and resolute. Janelle sat forward, whispering occasionally with her lawyer, her face as hard as stone. Meri, the one who had been most reluctant to testify against Cody, now sat unflinching and unyielding. The three wives sat together like a solid wall, one that Cody could no longer breach. Cody, however, appeared gaunt. His suit, which was once so sharp, seemed wrinkled. His eyes roamed wildly in the room, bristling with anger but also trepidation. Robyn sat next to him, mascara smudges framing her face, holding tissues and appearing shattered. They were no longer this couple of formidable strength, but two individuals trapped by reality. Christine's lawyer presented her closing argument first. She moved slowly across the courtroom floor, speaking in a clear, firm voice. This case isn't about arguments between a husband and his wives. This case isn't about dirty divorce or family soap opera. This case is about fraud. This case is about deception. And this case is about taking responsibility. For years, Cody Brown deceived the same women who gave up everything for him. He created secret accounts. He purchased real estate in secret. He pumped it into high living and comfort for himself and Robyn, while informing Christine, Janelle, and Meri that there was no money left. He deceived them, and he deceived the very idea of family which he professed to uphold. Today we request this court to render justice. The words echoed through the courtroom, and the jurors remained quiet, hanging on their every statement. Janelle's attorney came next, his tone biting, slicing the air. My client spent her nights in an RV as Mr. Brown diverted funds into shell companies. She forsook her comfort, her dignity, and her security for the dream of Coyote Pass. Her dream was a lie. Mr. Brown used it as a cover to conceal assets and get richer. This is fraud, plain and simple, and it cannot go unpunished. Meri's attorney was more measured but just as powerful. My client remained loyal to Mr. Brown long after the others had walked away. She defended him when no one else would. And how was she repaid? With deceit. With exclusion. With betrayal. This court must recognize not only the financial damage done, but the emotional damage as well. The agony of being informed that you belong to a family without actually being removed from it. This is not merely financial fraud. It is emotional fraud. Then it was Cody's turn. His attorney attempted to save what was left, casting the case as nothing more than a family squabble blown out of proportion. He asserted the secret accounts were misunderstandings. The wives were exaggerating, and Cody had been under immense pressure as the patriarch of a complicated family. The words rang hollow, hitting a brick wall of evidence. Finally, Cody himself rose, his words strained but defiant. I did what I had to do. They never realized how much weight I carried. They never realized what it was like to be responsible for this family. Everything I did was for the future, for their children, for security. They can spin it however they like, but I was keeping this family intact while they were dismantling it. His words were laced with anger, but the effect was lost. The jury remained unmoved. The judge, stiff and impassive, displayed no compassion. The courtroom fell silent as the judge stood ready to speak. This court has listened for weeks, examined large quantities of evidence, and heard both sides. What has been brought before us is an unsettling sequence of concealed accounts, deceptive transfers, and deliberate misrepresentation. Mr. Brown, the case against you is overwhelming. Gasp rippled through the room. Cody's face went white, his jaw clenching. Robyn hugged his arm, whispering hysterically. Christine, Janelle, and Meri stood firm, holding their breath for the words they had waited so long to hear. But then, in a dramatic turn, the judge hesitated. He scanned the courtroom room before speaking his last words of the day. This court will give its complete ruling in due course. But there has been new evidence presented to the court, evidence that indicates the extent of Mr. Brown's secret dealings is much greater than anyone ever imagined. Before this court can make a final ruling, this evidence has to be considered. The room exploded. Journalists scrambled to their phones, frantically typing. Christine and Janelle shared stunned glances. Even their lawyers looked surprised. Meri rocked her head back and forth, muttering under her breath. Cody pounded his fist on the table, screaming, "This is a setup! You can't do this to me." Robyn dissolved entirely, crying hysterically. The gavel came down, quieting the room. Court is adjourned until further notice. And with that, he stood up and departed, leaving the whole room in an uproar. There was a horde of media outside clamoring for answers. What was this new evidence? Were there more secret accounts, more properties, greater fraud than anyone had dreamed? The wives said nothing, their silence only serving to fuel the rumors. Cody was swept away, his face flushed with anger, Robyn hanging on to him as if the world were ending itself. The cliffhanger was established. The ultimate verdict would arrive, but now everything was riding on it more than ever.